Get ready, get set, and hold on. It's going to be one hell of a ride. Good morning. I'm your host, Paul-Gregory Matuszak, and this is the Mouth of Matuszak radio show. You're stuck with me for approximately 1 hour while we discuss all sorts of things on this, today, Wednesday, August 6th, 2014. It's Hump Day! For those of you in the Army or Marines, that means toss that pack on your back and start walking. Yeah. For the rest of us, that means it's about the middle of the work week. That's if you're a Monday through Friday worker. So about now, you should be about halfway through most of the week's tasks and activities, and looking forward to finalizing as many of them as possible before taking off on Friday to enjoy your weekend. Which means today is the day to get to work. Work hard. You see a light at the end of the tunnel, but the only way you're going to get to the end of the tunnel is if you keep on chugging along. That's a good thing, folks. That's a good thing. So, what do we have on our agenda for today? We've got all kinds of neat things. We've got some news, some current events. We've got some flashbacks to the past. Hopefully a little bit of humor, so that'll bring some smiles and chuckles and bright lights to your otherwise dim day. Dim day unless you happen to be down around where I live in this little speck of dust, this little speck of dirt, this insignificant little state, tiny little place called Texas. But down here in Texas, it's nice and bright. In fact, this time of day, the temperature's starting to rise. And around where I live, we're looking at temperatures around 100 going into the weekend. So for us, we're trying to keep a little bit cool here. So if you live in an area of the country where it's going to be nice and warm, make sure your pets are well hydrated and keep them as cool as you can. In other words, don't leave your puppies and your kitties, or your kids for that matter, in your car in this heat without some form of means of cooling them down, because otherwise bad things will happen. But we're also going to be looking at things going on in our government, of course, because we normally do that on this show.
You don't have a right to know everything in a separation of powers government, my friend. That is the difference between a parliamentary government and a separation of powers government.
So we don't have a right to know. Well, Miss Eleanor Norton, even though they don't have a right to know, I'm going to tell them anyway. At least what I know. What I know is Congress is officially in recess. The Senate yesterday went through and passed their bill, similar to the one that the House had passed, which says they're in recess. And because they're in recess, that means they don't have to show up every 3 days to do a vote on the floor. Now, what else was done yesterday? Not much in the Senate. We can get crickets out of what was accomplished from what I've seen on the list. And my overexcited blue healer has just started screaming at our representatives and senators, saying, "Why didn't you finish your jobs?" Anyway, and he's going to keep going, folks. But in the meantime, one thing that was done within the Senate is Senator Sessions took to the floor to bring up, or at least try to bring up some debate and some awareness about the immigration problems. Now, there are reports that it's started trickling down, that the numbers coming across have started to dwindle for one reason or another. And the question is, have they dwindled, or have they stopped turning themselves over to the Border Patrol as soon as they get here? Because that's what they were doing. So, if it's just that the numbers have staved off as far as numbers turning themselves in, we could be looking at a much more different crisis than what we originally anticipated. Now, I was going to play a flashback to the past of when Governor George Bush Sr. Wait, was he governor? No, I don't think he was. But when George Bush Sr. debated against President Reagan in 1980 during the GOP primary debates, that was one of the topics that came up, was immigration, specifically in Texas. And one of the key topics was whether or not illegal alien children should be allowed to go to Texas public schools or any public schools in the U.S. And folks, there was a Supreme Court decision that came out that said, based on the 14th Amendment, yes, the taxpayers have to provide the education to these kids, even though they're not citizens and they're not even here legally. That's interesting. Don't they do classes in juvenile hall? Just asking. But if you swing on over to BuzzPo, and you're going to have to scroll down, because I wrote this a couple of days ago, and it may not even be on the initial page list. But for those of you listening to the podcast, I'll do my best to put the link there for y'all to go and read it. But I discussed in that op-ed the legality of it, but also burden that's going to fall upon those of us who are taxpayers, and that includes the legal resident aliens, those who came here legally and are trying to get naturalized eventually, and it should be sooner than later as far as I'm concerned, because I think it takes too long. But those who have done it the right way, they've got to pay taxes, which are paying for these people who came here the wrong way, the illegal way, as well as those of us who are U.S. citizens, especially those of us who have some kind of an income and work for a living, or our pensioners who did work for a living and still have the federal income taxes pulled out. Now that's a whole different ball of wax. The federal government shouldn't be doing anything for education. It's outside of their purview, outside of their authority. It's unconstitutional. It's not listed in their enumerated powers, and the 10th Amendment forbids them from taking any part. But that notwithstanding, it is still being done, which means that this is going to fall upon American taxpayers. Then, of course, you go into your local communities where the bulk of education funding for public schools comes from, and that means higher property taxes. But there's other costs too. They have to be fed and clothed. Some of that's going to come from charities, but a good chunk of that is also going to come out of federal tax dollars and local tax dollars. Then there's a whole problem about school supplies. Well, folks, that's one of the things I bring up in that article towards the bottom of it, is some of you may look at your school supply lists for your kids, and they should be out already now. If they're not, you really need to look harder. Because I know, at least here in Texas, the small little dot of earth called Texas, insignificant spot. But anyway, the state level tax-free shopping day for school supplies, and there's a short list of what actually applies. But the first $100 of items purchased for the school year, and that includes certain items of clothing and certain other supplies. But the first $100 is per purchase is tax exempt this coming up weekend. And other states do this. I know Georgia does it, to name another. Well, you go there with your school supply list, and you look on there, and you notice a couple things on there. One of the things on there will be like something like Ziploc bags or self-sealing bags. And you'll notice a lot of other supplies there. And it looks like it's the bulk of supplies for the whole school year. Not true. It's double the supplies for the school year on some things, and it's what would last a school year with other things if you rationed it to your child and gave them half now and told me when this runs out, let me know and I'll give you the rest to bring to school to, resupply you. That would be the common sense answer. But the teachers and the administrators want you to bring it all in along with those Ziploc bags. And what are they for? They're going to take half of your kids' supplies and they're going to seal them up in these bags. And then they're going to give them to those who are in need, those who don't have. Now, I'm all for charity. I know the Targets around here. Name one outlet. They will donate X number of school supplies for X number that you purchase. So you go and purchase there, and this private company will make a donation based on what you purchase. So you help generate what their corporate donation is going to be to charity. Now, charity donation's a good thing. And then a lot of schools have donation boxes where you can go in and donate stuff. And for those that don't realize it, every public school and charter school and many of the parochial schools, and even some of the private ones, are 501c organizations, meaning they're tax exempt. They're a form of nonprofit organization, so therefore they're a charity of sorts. So donations to them, if you get the stuff properly documented, are also tax exempt. So if you go and do those donations and you get it documented, or you get your receipt certified, you get that tax exemption, and the kids get what they need. It's a win-win situation. And then there's just, you gave it to charity, which is a good thing. However, when you buy all those supplies on that list and you bring them all in on day one, and half of them get taken from your child and redistributed against your will, you don't get the tax exempt write-off. You are being forced to give to charity against your will. So, here's what we do. We go and we look at the list, and it says, for example, they need 2 glue sticks. I'm sorry. My kid does not need 2 glue sticks at the beginning of the school year. Well, they come in packs like 2 or 3. So we buy the package, and we send the child to school with 1. You can only use 1 at a time. Same with crayons. They need 3 packs of X number count crayons. We send them with 1. Pencils. We send them to school with 2 or 3 pencils instead of the 30 or 40 or whatever number the school requires. We send the child with exactly what she needs to do what she needs to do. Not enough to be able to redistribute to everybody else. And once we did get some statements from the teacher, and I looked at him flat in the eye and said, look, you want charitable donations? You're a 501. We'll donate, but we need a receipt for our tax records. So you let us know what you need, and we'll see what we can do for a charitable donation. But you're not going to force us to donate against our will. Now, if we sent the child with all these things, and you're going to take half of them, well, then we're going to bring our receipt in with us, and you are going to certify a tax write-off for half right off the bat. And if you're not authorized to make that certification, And somebody in this office is, and you're not going to touch so much as one pencil until we get that signed off. And then that also includes all the Ziploc bags, because our child doesn't need those. She's got her pencil cases and her folders, etc., which are also on the list. So, consider that. Go ahead and read my write-up on what the tax burden is and what the actual true burden is for funding these illegals going into our schools. And like I said, the Supreme Court ruled, they legislated from the bench and said you have to allow 14th Amendment protections to non-citizens here and do it. So that's the law as it stands. Now, can we do something about that? Sure. You know, do something through Congress. But think about it, though. We are a nation of laws, but we're also a nation of people built on certain ideals. And by and large, the people that everybody considers to be the most greedy, at least if you listen to the rhetoric coming from the left, are the people on the right, because they believe in the free enterprise and you keep what you earn and can do with what you want, do what you want with what you earn, lower taxes, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you have lower taxes and people are more free to do with their property, the fruits of their labors, and they're fairly productive and prosperous, chances are they're going to do charitable works. It's just part of human nature with good people, especially good people of faith. Be that Jewish, Christian, or various pagan faiths. People of faith tend to be very charitable and compassionate, as long as they're allowed to keep the fruits of their own labors and decide what to do with it themselves, rather than the government saying, you will be made to care. We are going to take this from you, but we're going to do good stuff with it. We're going to do compassionate works with it. Folks, there's another thing. On average, for every dollar of taxes that's earmarked to some compassionate, charitable government program, 80 cents of it goes to the agency workers, the bureaucrats, and 20 cents actually goes to the program itself, the people that need it. That's an 80% overhead. With most NPOs, if they have a 20% overhead, they're considered to be poorly administered. Think about that. So which one is inefficient and a waste of our efforts? Probably the government programs. Just food for thought. Food for thought as we're coming in towards the end of this first segment here. So let's break the first segment early and head into the